This is one of those videos that I wanted to do, but I also wanted to do it without having a bunch of people freak out and think one thing or another. But I do have to say that I have to admit the PS4 has been consistently better than Xbox One this entire generation, and it's something that's only really that evident now when you can look back that the generation's almost over and you see that it was a complete annihilation on Sony's part. Now, Sony didn't obviously do everything perfect, and obviously Microsoft has really come back and done a lot of things really well, but I think at the end of the day, I bought an Xbox One first based on the software, based on the games. When I saw Killer Instinct, Forza Motorsport 5, Dead Rising 3, Titanfall, Sunset Overdrive, they were announcing a new Halo. Obviously, that was something I wanted to be part of. Killer Instinct made a comeback, which was honestly a huge decision factor in which console I was going to get first. But clearly, a lot of Microsoft's ideas were centered around Kinect and kind of forcing that on you. So right out of the gate, sort of a bad mark for them. Sony, on the other hand, kind of limped into the generation, having had to put a lot of resources and time and money and everything into the PS3 to make it competitive, and they did. But it cost them a lot. They spent so much money making exclusives and things like that for it to come out to compete with the Xbox 360, and it put them in a bad spot. So they really just kind of threw all their eggs in one basket with the PS4, and then they jumped on Microsoft, and Microsoft kind of shot themselves in the foot with the announcements of the DRM and no used games and that kind of stuff. But I have to say, pretty much right from the start, I was very, very much attracted to what Xbox was doing, while on the PS4 side not so much, because even the games that they were coming out with, like the Order 1886 and like Bloodborne, were not my type of games. Obviously Drive Club was a letdown, so Sony struggled early on despite being the market leader, but then they really started to turn things around. It was like they started coming out with these games that surprisingly were amazing. Ratchet and Clank, Until Dawn, of course, Uncharted 4 was a tremendous game. They really just went all out and started coming out with these amazing games. Even some of the third-party games that they were getting were tremendous and came a long way. Even ones that weren't good right at the start, like Street Fighter V. Now, obviously, that game wasn't great right at launch, but you still do see that Microsoft had trouble kind of answering any kind of bell when it came to, exclusive content, especially after I think like 2014. It was kind of clear that Microsoft was calling it quits. So I went back and I was just randomly just playing PS4 exclusives that I have, even Spider-Man, and there's just such a difference in quality there. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, it beats a dead horse. We know Microsoft had struggles, and they did, but the fact that a company like Microsoft struggled that much with their games, I think it really just goes to show you that things aren't all what they seemed. And I think that even though Microsoft has done a little bit to come back and they bought these new studios, is that going to be enough? I don't know. I think for me personally, this E3 is going to be one of those do or die moments for Xbox, at least for me personally. It may not be for you guys, but I'm just saying for me personally, it's one of those things that is kind of a do or die moment. Obviously, Sony has done a lot right this generation, including VR, which I'm a big fan of, and Microsoft kind of screwed me over when they said they were going to support VR with the next PlayStation, with the Xbox One X, and they kind of canceled that idea. And I do think Microsoft has done some really cool things. Obviously, Game Pass being one of them, but one of those things that I find to be frustrating about Xbox this generation is the fact that they sunk all their eggs in that basket again, in the Game Pass basket, and that means that the games with gold games that we've been getting have been very, very lackluster, and I haven't been a fan of those. So I think that they sacrifice one for the other. They realistically have done a poor job in competing with Sony's games in that market, so that's a bit disappointing. Sony, I don't like their controller as much as Xbox. Obviously, I think Xbox Live far superior than PSN, and probably always will be. But obviously, it'd be crazy for me to believe that that the Xbox One X wasn't wasn't the superior console. I'm not making up any kind of assumptions or anything like that. Xbox One X is by far the superior console, by far the best place to play your multiplats and things like that. But I think the more I think about it, the more I go back and play these games. I went back and, man, Uncharted 4, which is a game that I first played before even the Pro even came out, and is probably one of the top 5 best-looking games this generation. Looks better than some PC games look on, like, max settings. What they were able to do with that. Even Horizon Zero Dawn looks and plays amazingly well. It's not my cup of tea, but you can play it, and you just get this feeling that this game is unlike anything else. You know what I mean? There's just, Microsoft hasn't been able to top that. That quality, when you just look at these games that are releasing around one another, and it's like Halo Wars 2 was Microsoft's offering around that time. That's kind of unacceptable. You look, it's like Recore for Microsoft, and then you look over and you see stuff like God of War, or you see stuff like Horizon Zero Dawn, or Detroit, or Spider-Man, and it's just really, really clear. Even with Days Gone, that looks absolutely phenomenal, and Microsoft is really sort of not really doing anything to really compete in that area. So I think Microsoft will compete next generation. I just think that they have to change some things and give us something to get excited about, because I really do think that Microsoft or Sony, is going to announce a lot of games starting next year at E3. I think they're going to obviously announce the big exclusives. They're going to announce the Horizon Zero Dawn 2s, the God of War 2s, another Uncharted, probably some new stuff as well. And I think that that's going to really appeal to a lot of people, where Microsoft hasn't had very strong exclusives this generation or for a while, and that's unfortunate. So Microsoft has a lot of ground to make up. They do have the studio talent, obviously, with Playground Games working on stuff, possibly most likely Fable, and you have Ninja Theory working on stuff as well. We could be seeing a situation where they can compete, right? Hopefully they do, but when you look at it, a lot of it tells me that Microsoft won't really be ready to compete, and those studios won't really be making much for Xbox console exclusively until 2022, 2023, very far off in the distant future, where I truly believe the next God of War, having already built that previous one, will probably come out in 2021, something like that. And Horizon Zero Dawn 2 likely well in development. Sony supposedly built up a new studio for Uncharted to keep that going. They're going to be releasing The Last of Us 2, obviously Days Gone, Death Stranding. They just have all these mega blockbuster hits lined up, and I just don't see how Microsoft will be able to compete with that. But that's the next generation. Just sticking to this generation, you can just see the quality is kind of lackluster on Microsoft's part. I love Sea of Thieves. The multiplayer is amazing, but the content is severely lacking and has been since the beginning. I find fun in it because it's something that I was able to enjoy with my friends. But I also have to point out that just look at the lineup on Microsoft's side. It's like Crackdown 3, State of Decay 2, which might be the biggest disappointment of the entire generation, Sea of Thieves, Halo Wars 2. These are our games, folks. I mean, yeah, those might be the last of the old breed, and I hope that that's the case, because I can continue to just be a huge Xbox fan. But at the end of the day, Sony did the better job at seeing what people wanted and delivering that, and I think that that's something that they should get credit for. If it was an election, this would be the point where, I think all Xbox fans would sort of say, hey, congrats Sony, you guys did a really good job. Let's kick it off next gen and hope that we do better as Xbox fans. But this is just me realistically showing respect. I think that Xbox launched with better games and then stopped caring about content, stopped producing content, and even though they're doing things like Game Pass, it takes away the meaning of it when you see how they have piss poor games. I'm sorry, Game Pass is cool, but until they're putting in AAA quality games, high rated Metacritic games, and I know Metacritic's not the be all end all, but it's still a very high indicator of a great game. Hence Forza Horizon. What's the one thing us Xbox fans always go, oh, well, Forza Horizon is the best racing game, best racing franchise. Here's what it gets in Metacritic, 90-something each time. until you start getting those for other games that aren't racing games, I think it's pretty clear that Microsoft has a lot of ground to make up and a lot to prove to fans. And this generation, with the Recores, and even Dead Rising 4 was a huge step back, and they had it for a year exclusively or whatever. But, you know, hopefully Microsoft can learn the lesson and see what's going on with Sony and kind of play off that a little bit better. Focus a little bit more on your content, because I feel like that's where they've been lacking for a very, very long time. And, you know, nobody just wanted to admit it. Even going back to the 360 era, it was pretty clear to see that Microsoft just did not have what it takes to combat Sony. Yes, Gears is great, Halo is good, Forza Horizon is great, but what outside of that? I thought Sunset was fantastic, but nobody bought it. Quantum Break was good, but you go back and play it now, and it does not age well, even though it's only 3 years old. So, just my opinion. Again, not abandoning Xbox, just admitting something. And I think it probably takes guts on my part to do it. So, let me know what you guys think, though. Rate, comment, subscribe. Rack 'em up. Crapgamer out.